even though we just finished the 24th legislative session, it's time to start thinking about 25 legislative sessions. So at this point, staff is just bringing some high-level topics to you to see as we start to engage in public listening sessions, as well as with our tribal partners in upcoming months, and then also to get your ideas so that we can have further discussion in June as we prepare to narrow the possibilities of agency request legislation down at the July meeting. So at this point, just high-level concepts that staff is thinking, and will still continue to vet and think forward as we engage tribal partners and the public in these conversations, would be a change to the Gambling Act to allow us to accept credit card fees, especially as we are potentially entering into, credit cards for payment of license fees, especially as we're entering into modernization features with our licensing and our public-facing interactive site with licensees, the My Account. So that is something that we're considering in terms of the Gambling Act. In terms of the Public Records Act, we are thinking about maybe we're examining the Public Records Act to see if changes are necessary to protect information and records that we require to possess or verify to carry out our regulatory and licensing mission. And then lastly, discrimination based on cannabis use was a statute that was enacted in 2023. And there are exemptions that exempt general authority agencies from being able to not hire based on drug tests. And we are examining whether this would be something that limited law enforcement agencies might benefit from in terms of making a change as well. We are open to your ideas today because we would like to take those to our June 3rd planned time for public listening session, and as well as meeting with our tribal partners to hear their thoughts and ideas on these topics, as well as any topics that they may have for the commission to consider. We'll bring all of that back with feedback to you for your consideration at the July meeting, at which time we will ask you to give us direction as to what topics you think would be best for us to move forward with, because that would give us then about the 60-day time period to do all the prep work for submission for final approval at the September meeting. I haven't checked to see when the packet is due to the governor's office, but it's usually around mid-September. So that's how quickly we end up to where we're at. Any thoughts or ideas that you might like staff to explore in the next few months?
Commissioner Sizemore?
So I have one addition that I would like to propose, and then of the three issues that staff's brought forward, I'm not asking that we not, listen and kind of begin going down the path of investigating, but the 49, 44, 240, which is discrimination based on cannabis use, and the exceptions that currently apply to general law enforcement but do not apply to limited law enforcement. I really want us as a policy board to evaluate whether we really have a problem with our employees using a legal substance, and whether that really is a big deal. I know that there are some federal policy changes under consideration related to cannabis. We have experts I see on the screen, certainly an expert on cannabis, and we have actually probably a few experts on screen. But the potential or the possibility of getting a super qualified law enforcement candidate that can't go work at a general law enforcement agency only for the only reason is because they smoked marijuana or took an edible 3 months ago, that really intrigues me. I'd like to steal people away. So I think there are certainly implications of they have to be able to testify. There's a whole bunch of implications. They get firearms and cars. But I want to be thoughtful as we go forward, as this, not you, but the rest of us, as we go forward on these. So I'm open to being shut down right now, or that's going to be my perspective on that going forward. I may be very well convinced that we should seek that exception, but my gut right now is that I don't want to close the window on maybe it being an opportunity.
What federal implications?
I think the Biden administration's trying to really reduce the
Classification of the
Yeah.
substance. So right now it's considered extremely harmful and they're trying to move it to a lower classification.
Yeah.
But, and I know there was the RCW passed recently that allows for, right, like you can still test healthcare workers and I think law enforcement. I don't know if that is mandatory though, or if that is, so just something voluntary. I don't know if if the Representative Clover or Senator Conway know the answer to that offhand, but. Oh, Representative Clover, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that this is something that is being taken under consideration. There's, I think as Bud said, if you have a job classification, say for instance, like our limited law enforcement officers, that maybe has a requirement that you are not currently utilizing cannabis, that's great. But I think the crux behind the law that was passed, it was a Senator Kaiser bill, basically is that you can't be penalized for legal product usage before you were under the rules of the potential employer. And once you are, well, then that's a different situation. And just like, whatever their testing regimen is now, that would continue on. But it just doesn't artificially reduce that pool of candidates who would be good folks to interview and perhaps hire just because of previous legal activity. So, and I think that is definitely commendable that we take a look at. And then I have also, so it's currently a Schedule I drug, like Chairman Levy said. There's no redeeming use or language similar to that. And the consideration now at the federal level is to bring it to Schedule III, which means that it does have potential medical benefits. And so it's, on par with like ibuprofen. And so it still would be illegal on the federal level. And I know, there's some implications with firearms possession rules and things like that. But I also, and I can't remember from the very beginning of the conversation, is that something that is being considered for non-commissioned officers, like say a records person or any of the other, there's a lot of administrative personnel that work for the Gambling Commission. What's the current rule in terms of cannabis usage for them, and where does that factor in during the employment process?
Currently, only law enforcement staff are tested as part of the long litany of requirements through the pre-hiring process. But that is the only classification that is required to pass a drug test. Well, not right now by statute. So, so currently no one. No one is required to pass the drug test. No one is required to pass the
Pre-employment.
pre-employment
Because
as a condition of employment.
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
condition.
But it's not something that we give to anybody outside of the law. And in fact, I don't even know if we're doing it now.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm a little confused, Madam Chair, because of Karen or Senator Kaiser's legislation. What else did you want to pursue? But I wasn't aware of Kaiser's legislation. What else did you want to see change besides what that bill changed this session?
I want to be convinced that we should seek an exemption from that statute.
I see.
I'm just, I guess, signaling, I need to be sold that
Okay.
that we need that exemption.
Right.
And then I do have another topic, I guess. I don't want to take all the time, but, so in the, fee simplification and restructure process that we went through 5-6 years ago, one unintended consequence, that seems to, exist is that if someone decides to get out of the gambling business, we don't really have, I don't know, hammer or feather or whatever we need, but we don't really have a method to ensure that they are making their final quarterly reports as well as their final quarter payments if there is a payment due. So I would like to look at whether we need to, and if we can do it by rule, fine, but it probably feels like this may require statute change in order to ensure that we have jurisdiction when they're maybe past their license expiration. So yeah, just to ensure that, you know, I think most people want to have clean books at the end of their operation, but if people are just walking away and owe the gambling commission money at the end, then that affects the rest of, you know, our existing licensees by, you know, them not paying their bills, and it causes us to not have fully accurate data because we don't have their final quarter records.
And just for, as staff and has this conversation with tribal partners and public listening sessions, what are you thinking, civil penalties, or just give us jurisdiction for what actions moving forward in terms of?
I would take the staff's recommendation. I mean, it's whether it's civil penalties, failure to, you know, if somebody can't get any other license until they pay that, or whether they go to collections. I'm open to a range of solutions.
Okay.